To recap templates from last week, what I want to do to begin with is I'm going to start by using a blank Autocad, and I'm going to start a new drawing. Okay, and so what Autocad wants to do is it wants to find a template. Okay, when we're completely out of any drawings and we open up a new one, it wants to find a template to open up the new one from. And as we noted last week, is that AutoCAD saves all of its templates in a folder where the program is installed. But what I want to do is I want to call it my template. So I'm going to go to the place where I know it's saved. I'm going to point AutoCAD to that, and it's going to open up a new drawing for me with my units in architectural and with all of my layers here. So I can actually theoretically get started on any plan drawing that I want to start to work with, and it saves me that time. So that's basically what the template is for. Now what I want to do is I want to get into some additional modifiers to continue, with the drafting exercises that we've been doing so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close up my properties palette, and I'm going to just create some shapes. Okay, and what we learned before in the past, but I just want to put it down in writing, is that whenever we select any objects and we hold down Shift and select one or more, that deselects them. So just so you have that down, you can deselect objects by just holding down Shift and clicking on them again, or selecting them again using any selection tools. Now, what we talked about last week is we talked about scaling by reference and rotating by reference. And there's also what I mentioned, there is an align command. And what it does, it essentially does those two things, but it combines them in a command, and it works a little bit differently. So for example, if I have a line that I draw at a random angle and I type in align, okay, or the shortcut for it is AL, and enter, and it is also in your modify commands up here in your tool buttons. It's in this bottom row right here. Okay, and if I type in AL and enter and I select my objects, okay, object or objects, what it asks me to do is to specify a first point. So what that means is I'm going to click on one point of the reference object, okay, and I'm going to click on my line. Right now my snap is leading me to the end point, so I'm going to click there. It's going to ask me to specify a source point. Now it does put this line here, but that's an imaginary line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to again select an object snap on my original object, and I'm going to snap it to this line that I created. And then you can hit enter, and it's going to ask you if you want to scale it based on the new alignment point. So basically what you can do is you can either scale it to that or you can't. I'm going to say no for now. And you'll see that what it does is it actually takes it snaps it to that line, and it aligns it with this and snaps it to the line itself. Okay, so I'm going to delete that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another line and hit enter. And again, you can do this with multiple objects or single objects. I'm going to type in AL again. Okay, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it. So I'm going to select my object. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to specify my first source point. So first endpoint object snap on the original object. Snap it on the line. Second source point is on the original object. And the destination is on the line. And then I'm going to hit enter to get into the next stage of the command, and scale objects based on alignment points. I'm going to say yes. So what now it's going to do is it's going to take that rectangle, it's going to rotate it to that line, and it's going to scale it to that line. So you can use that, and you'll see that when I select it, the line is still underneath. Okay, so you can use that to basically do what we did by scaling by reference and rotating by reference, but you can use it in the align tool. So now what we want to do is, as we start to get into drafting a little bit more, you'll see that especially with our object snaps, we're going to start to get used to which ones we want, which ones we don't want. Okay, and you might find, so I'm just going to erase this line real quick, and I'm going to draw another line over here, but you might find that when you go to snap something, so I use the move command, I'm going to specify my object, I'm going to specify my base point, and what happens is that if I have certain object snaps selected and some deselected, Okay, I'm going to have to get used to what I actually want to have selected and deselected, you know, in order to start working in the way that I feel comfortable. I might feel that too many is too many. I might feel that there's not enough. So for example, right now, this is only wanting to snap to the endpoints, okay? And I want to snap to the midpoint. So there's a couple things that I can do. One, I just hit escape to get out of the command. One is to right click on that object snap. And you'll see, again, as we talked about, these are all the ones that are in the list, okay, of potential object snaps. And the ones that have the blue box around them are the ones that are activated right now, okay? So you'll find that my midpoint is not activated, okay? I can click on all of these, okay? What you can also do is you can go down to settings and you can have them all here too as well. So you can turn on nodes, and we'll talk about nodes a little bit later. I usually have endpoint, midpoint, center, node. Usually I don't have extension or intersection on. I usually have perpendicular, sometimes tangent, but nearest. And those are the ones that I like to work with. Now again, this is personal preference, so you can choose all of them, okay? And you can choose only a few of them to begin with. And you'll start to see as you start to use Autocad which ones you do prefer using. So once that's done, I'm going to hit OK. Make sure that this is on, okay? And again, I'm going to type in move, and I'm going to select my objects, and I'm going to select the endpoint, and then I'm going to mouse over these ends, you know, and these points in the line. Now this one, you'll see if I just take my hand off the mouse for a little bit and let it sit there, it'll tell you in your dynamic input which object snap it's snapping to. So that's going to be nearest, and nearest is the nearest point on that line for the cursor. So it's just going to make sure that it's a bit arbitrary and that it's the nearest point on the line, but when you snap it, it actually is going to snap those two objects in the same, you know, you're snapping one object on the other object, okay? So they're not going to be off at all. You're snapping it to the nearest point on the other object. Now there might be a time when, okay, well I have my endpoints and I have all these nearest, and I just want to quickly just go to my midpoint, okay? So what I'm going to do is while I'm in this command, I'm going to type in mid and hit enter, and it's going to snap my object snaps just to show the midpoint, okay? So that basically I can move my mouse wherever it is, and you can be a little bit rougher with it, okay? It can be much more of like a rough guess of where your midpoint is, because as long as it's constrained to only show the midpoint, it's not going to show my endpoints, it's not going to show my nearest, okay, until I click, and it's going to snap it to the midpoint. Okay, and then after that, it's going to reset itself and it'll show all the snaps again. Okay, but while you're in a command, if you know that you just want to snap to the midpoint or to an endpoint or to the nearest, what you can do is you can either type in end, or you can type in mid, or you can type in PER. So for example, if you want something that's perpendicular, you can just type in those shortcuts. It'll automatically snap to those locations.